What's up? What's up? Welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. This is like the 10th time I'm recording this intro, so let's keep it quick. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter, NJH287, or on LinkedIn, the website, dsmsports.net, and of course, follow the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Just an awesome show for you guys today. I enjoyed this interview so much. Came away with laughs, with chills and goosebumps, with moments of clarity. Just a tremendous interview with Savannah Hollis. She is Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Yes, the newest NHL team that made the playoffs last year, won a round. Savannah just offers so much good insight into truly building the brand of the Kraken, understanding what makes Seattle tick, what makes potential and existing fans of hockey in Seattle tick, and what makes them want to become a fan of the Kraken. Really good stuff on fan development. Also just an incredibly harrowing tale of how she got the job with the Kraken. Lots of fun there. Just so much good stuff with Savannah. So listen up. Here is Savannah Hollis, Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Right back with today's guest, and I'm so excited to talk to her. We've already been having a great conversation. Before we hit record, I'm joined on the podcast today by Savannah Hollis. She is Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Welcome to the podcast today, Savannah.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
So psyched to learn from you. You are full of energy, positive energy. You've had an impressive career already. You're still young, doing your thing up there in Seattle. So tell us about your background. Tell us all the stops you've had along the way, what you studied, and how you got to where you are today, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Oof, yeah. So I'll try and be as brief with this as I can because I had a bit of a weird journey to get here. But I started out, I went to school for psychology because I was like, oh man, I definitely want to be a psychologist. I want to work with athletes, be a team psychologist one day, understand kind of the why behind what they do, right? Why, or just kind of help them to kind of work through problems that happen. And something that was thought was fascinating. Got halfway through and I was like, I don't think I love this to do this for 16 years. And so ended up switching my major over to communications. Had no idea that working for a team in a communications capacity was even an option. I don't know if I just lived under a rock or something, but I was just you can do this and get paid, what? And so, yeah, so kind of dove in, ended up taking a couple of years to work at various levels of intern for the National Predators. Started out doing just game night communications staff. So working a lot on, the press bridge, getting to know their writers, starting to get to know people within the organization, helping out with just different projects that they needed. Was full-time communications intern the year after that. So balanced that with my senior year of undergrad. Graduated, struggled to find a sports job. So took a lot of people don't know this actually. I took about 6 months and worked in trucking.
Wow.
So logistics. Yeah. So I was managing, or learning how to manage, I guess, line haul truckers and docks and all of this crazy stuff that I was I had no idea this was even a thing. It wasn't my cup of tea, so decided to go back to grad school. During this year, I was still doing some part-time help for them for the game night staff. Went back to grad school. Shout out Belmont. Yeah. And then, was the graduate assistant for hockey ops, my final year in Nashville. So I learned a ton, worked with some of their analytics folks on how to kind of learn about analytics, realized analytics wasn't my strong suit. So kind of transitioned into doing some more, work with, immigration. So learning how to do the immigration paperwork for players. Doing kind of coming up with different books. So guidebooks for when you have your prospects out for development camp, trying to put together some stuff kind of a resource guide for players when they and their families move to the city, just little kind of things like that to kind of help really make them feel welcome and make them feel like they're a part of the organization, which was super fun. I feel I learned so much there about how the PR side works, how to tell stories, but then also, how to build relationships, and what kind of goes into the hockey operations side, right? These folks, oh my gosh, I worked really closely with the scouts. These folks travel so unbelievably much and they're rarely in the office. They miss so many things with their, their families to for the betterment of this team. Right. And I always will say our scouts are so underappreciated and just underrecognized. And I just am always in such awe of what they do. So I worked really closely with them my final year. Was like, got to the summer, I was like, I've been with Nashville for about 4 years now. I think it's like, it's kind of, I'm at that point where I could do another year here, but then it's going to be like, how do you get that job, right? Like if you're still doing like these like part-time or unpaid roles, how do you get that time? So I ended up applying to a bunch of different things. Was offered a season-long assistantship in the AHL. So down in Texas with the Dallas Stars AHL team. Went down there, did a little bit of everything.
One of the biggest kind of like leaned into like, because you were in hockey ops, like and on track to maybe work in team ops for the long term. Like, had you kind of decided, okay, this is the part of the team organization that I want to be in, this is the skills I want to specialize in, or are you still kind of figuring out at that point?
I think I was still figuring it out. It's a great question, right? Because like I love that side of it, right? Like, it's like everyone's dream is to have the in to the team side, right? It's cool. Like you feel like you're a part of something. But I loved the creativity that came from the comm standpoint. And in Nashville, like I'll clarify this, like when I was there, it was definitely like comms was just like that kind of PR set. Yeah. Like it wasn't as much like the social and digital. There was like the written component and kind of like some video features that, we had someone on the staff would make, but it was primarily that kind of that like true PR team. And so you learned a lot, right? Like you learned how to tell stories, you learned how to, understand storylines and, how to like build up certain players and not, right? And you work so closely with hockey ops. So like you're still kind of a part of it, but there's that like that creativity that you get to like dive a little deeper than, than I don't know, like I think you can in other spots and, really kind of figure out how to make people care. And I grew up a hockey fan, but like the thing that drew me to that was feeling like I was a part of something else, right? Something that was bigger than myself. And I think when it goes back to school, the motivation, the reason why I wanted to do this is because I want other people to feel that, right? Like, like sports gave me something to look forward to. It brought me together with people that I'm friends with. And some of my best friends in the world have come because of my sports background, right? Like whether it's working or just having a team in common, things like that. Like it creates this community, and I think it's really cool. So long-winded.
I want to definitely go back to Texas Stars and all that. We're gonna just spend the entire hour just talking about your career path. But I've always wanted to kind of get the inside scoop, inside hockey, inside baseball, whatever I call it, with team ops and PR and working with the stories that you want to facilitate, you want to tell. Especially as the in-house media grew, and it wasn't just as much about third-party media. Are there conversations around like, hey, we may not want to talk about this player too much because he's a pending UFA. He might be traded if we're not in the playoffs. Or hey, this kid is just getting started. Like we don't want to pump his ego too much. Like let him get his feet first. Like how much of like the actual hockey side of it comes into play when it comes to what stories you're working with PR to tell?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's actually it's a really good question. It is something that you're taking into consideration, right? Like you always want to find that balance. And I think from a broader standpoint, it comes back to, and I don't know if this is everyone, maybe this is just me, but I always try to think of like, what's the worst case scenario, right? If we do this, what is the worst thing that could come of it, right? So it's like if we, I don't know, like say last year, we're pumping up Matty Beniers. He's like having an unreal season. The team's doing really good and we're pumping his tires. And then all of a sudden halfway through, he hits like the wall and then just, right. And then you're like, ooh, we put him in a bad spot because now all these fans have been used to seeing us pump him up and now he's doing maybe not so well. And all of a sudden now he's getting just destroyed because of that, right? Yeah. Because now fans are noticing that he's not very good. So it's a balance, right? Of just trying to think through, like how you promote someone and you shine light on their accomplishments and you kind of build that fan connection without doing so in a way that's going to hurt them if something goes wrong. And so that's kind of what we look at. And again, I don't know if that's just like me and my crazy brain, but I think just like with the background that I have, like that's something that's always been really important to me.
No, it's a great insight, especially being with the Kraken, with a young team, with a team that everyone was waiting for Ron Francis to trade a bunch of guys. Like you got to take those things into account for sure.
Yep.
So I interrupt you there. You're figuring out career at Texas Stars in the AHL. Let's go back to it.
Yeah, no. So NHL versus AHL, super different. Obviously, the game stays the same. Um, I went down there, kind of wasn't like, again, like I told you, I really love the creativity side, was really kind of into the like, trying to figure out how to tell stories. Got an assistantship. It was gosh, I think it was broadcast and media relations assistant was like the title. It was something crazy like that. And I was like, okay, so I went down there. I'm not a broadcaster, did not do any broadcast. So we'll just sweep that one aside. But I did a lot of work, I taught myself how to do graphic design because
Wow.
that was one of the things that we had to help out with was creating some graphics, doing social, had never done social media before, had never really touched a website before. Like most of my background was on the comm side, right? Like, reading and editing and proofing the media guides or, helping come up with like, you know, written stories or stats or things like that. And so kind of like, I think going to the AHL is really what helped me to get into this space because you have to do everything. The stabs are so small that, if you're in charge of PR, oftentimes the PR person is also the broadcaster and also has to help with like team services on occasion, or they have to help with like all this other stuff. And so for me, I was like, okay, like I'm coming in as the assistant. I'm taking on some PR responsibilities, managed the press box, helped with game notes, wrote press releases, also did social, also did the website, also did graphic design. Like, and again, not the only person, right? But it's like everyone has those skills so that they can, step in and pitch in when they need to. I was super, super lucky in that I was graduating grad school. They ended up extending me to full time. So grateful because I learned so much, but obviously, right, like you want to start working in the NHL again, right? Like at the end of the day, like I loved hockey and I would have stayed there forever had I not gotten an opportunity to go back to the NHL, which is what happened with Florida. And at this point, because, right, like I had diversified my skill set from hockey ops, from communications, and I'd learned all those new skills, I was able to apply for a variety of jobs. Got a call back from the Panthers. Shout out Addie to my old boss. She gave me an opportunity to come back, back to the big leagues, and ended up joining the communications team as the social media coordinator, which was super cool. Given that, again, my background was in comms, so I still had that tie-in. They still gave me opportunities to do different comms work, but I was also able to like fine-tune more skills, like learned more Photoshop, learned how to use nice like DSLR cameras, learned how to create content plans and build strategies and, learn how to like engage with fans. Like there was just so many opportunities that I got there that I'm like forever grateful for.
Where was social media there for the Panthers? Like, were you the first social media hire? Or was there already a coordinator before you and a manager at this point?
Yeah. So at that point, because it was, let's see, I think Addie really kind of started their social. She's still there now.
Yeah. Great.
But at that point, they had a coordinator or a manager, I can't remember, who had moved on to a like kind of work outside of sports. Mm-hmm. And so I came in as the coordinator and it was just me. Wow. So I was managing, the Panthers care accounts, so like their like community account, helped manage did most of the management of their PR account, managed the main accounts, would help out, from time to time with the arena. Like, it was, again, like this was back in 2016, 2017. So most teams really only had one, maybe two people if you were lucky. So it's crazy that even since then, it's changed so much.
Oh, significantly. So you build these skills at the Panthers. Where comes next?
Yeah. So actually, one of my very dear friends in this league had met the folks from Seattle at the time at the All-Star game. I think it was in San Jose that year. I'm pretty sure. And it was my second year with Florida. It was me, him, and another gal. We're all in like a group chat together, and so we would like always text like, "Oh my gosh, like how cool it'd be to go to Seattle! Like Seattle's so cool!" Like, and it was like mostly tongue in cheek, right? Because you're just like, oh, surely they're going to find someone. It's like never going to even be a possibility. And then all of a sudden I get this text being like, hey, so I met these people. I talked to them about the stuff. I actually think that this would be an amazing fit for you. And I was like, no. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, absolutely. Like, just talk to him. So, I connected with the, I think it was digital manager at the time. And he and I chatted. It was just kind of like an informal call. And it was mostly just like, hey, like, we're trying to set some stuff up. Like, what do you think? What do you recommend? Like, what products do you guys use? So I kind of left just being like, oh, like it's, they were just looking for like information and like kind of like a contact to help. So I like, again, didn't even think of anything of it. This is so he ended up sending me an email being like, yeah, like we're looking for this, for this job. And I was like, is this like one of those soft sells where like they can't really approach me, so I have to express interest? And I literally called like 5 people and I was like, what do I respond with?
Wow.
Like, I'm so confused. And so they were just like, okay. So like they helped me type this email out and I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I would absolutely be interested in something like this if you think that it would be a good fit. If not, totally fine. I have a whole list of other people I can send you. And so it's kind of like, you gave them both options so that you didn't set yourself up to get hurt. And ended up responding. We went through the interview process. This is the worst interview I've ever done in my life. Like, I bombed all of these in my own opinion. And I was just like, saying, I'm like, I'm never going to get a call back. So that after the first one, got to call back. Said it after the second one, got to call back. And then they wanted to fly me out. We were like in the middle of the season and I was like, I literally can't leave. Like, I'm the only me here. If I leave, who's going to do social while I'm gone? Like, it's not an option. And so I was just like, like, I can't, like, here's why. I could come out after the season, but they were in a bit of a rush to get this done. So again, wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. I get a call or an email on a Monday, which, again, my mom worked in HR for like 14 years. So I've always been under the impression it's like, if you're going to offer someone a job, you do it on a Friday. They take the weekend, they think about it. They get back to you Monday or Tuesday, you send out like your rejection emails. And so I get a thing on Monday being like, hey, do you have a few minutes to talk? And I was just like, oh, crap. I was like, I'm not getting it. So I like fully prepared. I was like at the office. I was like, yeah. So I just like went up to like the top level of the rank to be like, yeah, it's fine. I didn't get the job. Cool. So I'm up there fully expecting it starts asking about like the weather, being like, oh, how's the weather down there? And I was like, this is kind of a weird conversation to start off with the weather, but like, okay. And so we're chatting and all of a sudden he goes, yeah, we'd love to offer you the job. And I was like, I was sitting there. I'm sure as you can tell right now, I love to talk. I was speechless. And he was just like, hello. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm processing right now. I was like, what? And yeah, so ended up accepting. And then let's see, I actually gave my 2 weeks the day that that the Panthers had hired a new coach. So it was like the craziest day because we're like announcing this coach. I am like trying to find a way to like grab my boss in the middle of this and tell her that I'm like putting in my 2 weeks. And I was just like, oh my God, I was so stressed out. It was like the most insane day of my life. And then, well, at that point, it was maybe the most insane day of my life at that point. And yeah, then came out here and have been with the Kraken ever since.
What an emotional roller coaster just throughout. And we've all been there though too. Like we won't turn this into like a job hunt podcast, but we've talked a lot about it on the podcast. And it's that like, it's like you're dating, you're that courtship of like, oh, should I write back? What should I write back? They haven't texted me back. They haven't emailed me back yet. What do I say? Like, I want to make sure they don't feel uncomfortable. Like, there's so many tangents there, so many parallels there.
Oh my gosh. And it's just like, I feel like when you're in the middle of that too, you're just like, oh man, like, did I like word this the right way? What if when they read it like this and not how this, which is what I wanted them to read it like, it's like you get so in your head about it. It's crazy.
That's in some ways, it's really good practice for social media because copy matters. And who knows, like someone might read your tweet one way, someone else might read it another way. There's no sarcasm font.
Exactly. Maybe that's the reason why we're so in our heads about it, right? Is because you're so used to being like, all right, how's someone online going to read this if they have no idea who we are, right? Or like no idea about like our tone or the context. So that's an interesting point. I like that.
So you go to Seattle, like there's no team yet, there's no players yet, there's no nothing yet. What does the infrastructure look like in the beginning? And frankly, like what are the day-to-day goals? Like what are you guys trying to accomplish from your perspective at that point?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think so technically I was employee 29 to get hired between us and the building, which is wild to think about. I was like, what? Actually, super side note here, but Zach Pagan is on my team. He was the second employee ever hired by the team.
Wow. That's wild.
Mm-hmm. He has done everything from like he has done everything. Like he didn't get into social until after we launched the team name, but he was like going around like passing out like flyers to like get people to like, come support the arena stuff like down at like Seattle City Council, and like would like knock on doors, make signs. Like it's crazy. Like his story at some point, like would love to introduce you guys because he's like just got such a crazy background. Yeah. It's
So
cool.
so you have you, Zach.
Yeah. So it was us. There were a couple other folks. Again, it was like we were all kind of like one group, but there was like folks who were kind of dedicated to the arena, folks dedicated to the team. So when I got here, we had my boss, who was the manager of digital, VP of marketing, kind of EVP of business ops, a marketing manager, and a graphic designer. And it was like us. And then it was like everyone else was all like VP or higher. Like it was like us and then the executives and some sales folks. And you're just like, I was like, am I qualified enough to be here? Like everyone here is like really talented.
I feel like you're part of a startup, probably. It's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, literally though, right? Like, and it was such an adjustment, right? Because like you're going from like working in season, working crazy hours, knowing that like you're off season, like you still have like busy times to, I mean, gosh, like these times are so flexible, right? Like you come in at 9, you leave maybe around 4, like it was great, but I think to your initial question, like asking about like goals and kind of what our kind of like our strategy was at that point, like it was really about building and generating interest within the organization, because we knew we weren't going to be starting till 21, 22 at that point. We had a lot of like, time before we were going to announce things like team name. And so it was really just, it was about educating people, getting people excited for hockey, telling stories about hockey, telling stories about, the NHL, kind of like keeping people up to date on like, okay, like if you are interested in our team, you want to learn about hockey, but you're a newbie, let's go into the background. Like, let's understand why positions matter. Let's understand what the difference between a forward versus a defenseman is, or, why we use certain gear. Just like we were kind of just like, what is interesting, right? Like as a new hockey fan, what are you curious about? What do you want to know? And let's look into it. We did a ton of great storytelling too. My old boss, Cam, he did this great series. There's a ice rink up in Central Washington called, it's like the Winthrop Ice Rink, but it's outdoors, NHL regulation size rink. We had like a team of staff who went up and played in like a tournament there because they were all learning hockey. And we did like a whole content series, right? It was really freaking cool, right? And so, we're just finding little things to kind of get people excited, to gauge interest, to build brand awareness and recognition. And then the closer, or I guess like honestly, kind of the closer it got to brand launch, the more interest you're getting, right? Because at some point it goes from being like, okay, like you guys are coming in a year, what the heck is your team name? And so, like you start to kind of then like play into that and start get people excited about like, oh, like what's our name going to be? And, like we didn't want to,
my money was on sockeye. That's my bet was.
I will say, out of like all of the fan suggestions, that was my least favorite. I was like, not a chance. But like, I also like, I loved the Kraken. I thought that was such a cool name. Yeah. I'm also like super old school with some of this stuff where I'm like, oh, like Metropolitans also would have been really sick. Because like, again, you have like the history, that I'm also kind of a nerd in that stuff. So, but yeah, it was just, it was super cool. And then, COVID hit, right? And then, you go through the Black Lives Matter movement, you start to really kind of think about social justice and like these impacts. And, we started really kind of thinking about like as an organization, like who do we want to be, right? Like, who are we and what do we stand for? And, I think one of the coolest things about us is like from the very beginning, like even prior to a lot of that, like we wanted to be a little different, right? We wanted to make the game more accessible. We want to like, like show that it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, what color your skin is. Like we want you to feel like this is a place that you could be and you could relate to and you could succeed in. And it's something that I always kind of look back on. And those couple of years were hard for a lot of people, myself included. Like I moved up to Seattle. I had one friend here that I knew from high school. I had my dad's cousins who, I didn't know them super well until I moved out here. And then coworkers, right? Thousands of miles away from family, like secluded in a tiny little studio. Like you're just like, what am I doing? And I look back at those times, and one of the things that just like I think to me was really encouraging or gave me kind of that like hope to kind of go through was really like how we grew as an organization, and like some of the stuff that like we did within the community, and the storytelling, and kind of that like that engagement and the awareness. And it's been really, I think, cool, and it set a really strong precedent for us. And I hope, right, it sets a good example for other organizations and other people in the industry.
And at that point too, this kind of goes back to even just like forming that voice early on, and that social media strategy early on too, content strategy early on, where like in some ways you could have said, okay, we are going to try to, we know there's some hockey fans out here already. There's a reason there's a team here. You have these, Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. You have some ice sheets around. We can try to go for that low hanging fruit first and get them to be future name to be determined fans, or Kraken fans, obviously. But also you kind of lean into like the Seattle identity. Hey, you're a Seahawks fan, you're a Mariners fan. Get ready to be a Kraken fan or whatever team fan. So and I think as you kind of mentioned, going into COVID and having really understanding that we are part of the community here, like does that lend itself to really endearing yourself to Seattle and making sure that like these, hey, we are part of the same community you are, and therefore as a Seattle fan, we're on the same team essentially.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like funny, like you think about strategy too, right? Like coming here, I had never been to Seattle prior to moving here.
Wow.
I think I drove through once with like my friends who live in Portland. And like we took like a trip up to Canada and then literally drove from Vancouver back to Portland. So we drove through Seattle. I'd never been here otherwise. And so, when you talk about strategy and that tone and that voice, and like, I had to rely on like a lot of like coworkers, or just I had to spend so much time doing research, right? Like talking to people that I would meet and really trying to understand like what does this city care about, right? Like what does speak to the Pacific Northwest? What does speak to a Seattleite? And that was really challenging, right? Being someone who's like, okay, like I'm supposed to build like an online brand presence for this like city that I've never been to, like. And I think like I underestimated like how challenging that was going to be at first, but it's also one of the things I think that pushed me to really kind of like grow. But again, right, it goes back to like, we really did want to engage the community. The amount of, kind of fan listening groups that our CEO and our, at that point, like our head of hockey ops, who was Dave Tippett, fun fact, not a lot of people remember that. They would sit down, they do these fan focus groups. They talk to people, they'd hear like, what do you think about this? What do you care about? What do you want to learn? And, I tried to watch the videos from those, or, kind of like ask our marketing team questions about it, because that's the type of stuff that you learn. And, you'll see we actually are getting ready to do this here in a couple of weeks, but, once a year, we try to do these like fan content polls, right? So we want our fans to help dictate what we're doing, right? Because they're the ones engaging with it. Like, like if you pay attention, you're going to see that stuff, but you also want to empower your fans to like build a positive community. Because I think the worst thing any brand can do is just be like, no, we know it's best, turn into that like really corporate account who doesn't actually engage or like listen to their audience, and then becomes relevant, right? Like the more you engage, the more you listen, the more you like, work with them, the more positive of an experience it's going to be for everyone. And so that really was our goal, right, in Seattle. So I know I'm a little all over the place with this.
No, this is perfect. I love this.
Yeah, but like Seattle's it's a city that they're so invested. They care so much. And Seattle's a city of just they want to be the best. You have so many incredibly smart and talented people who live here, but there's also so much culture, right? Like the amount of Native American tribes out here, right? Like we're actually partners with Muckleshoot, the tribe. They're going to be our jersey patch sponsor. They're going to be probably one of our biggest partners. And learning more about that, learning more about Native American culture, learning more about culture from people who are Asian American, because there's a high population of Asian Americans here. It's so unbelievable, right? And you get to learn about that and continue again to just advocate for people to be better, and try and just shine a light where you can shine a light, and just remember to try and be a voice for everybody and not just like a small subset.
Yeah. And in some ways, having to do all this before you had a team, before you had games,
Mhm.
and you weren't just like get stuck in the the content treadmill or the monotony of a season. I'm using a little hyperbole, but it can get that way. And so you had no one else, to talk about or talk to. You had to go to the community. You had to like understand your fans and engage them at
Mhm.
that deep level. And this essential tenet, no matter as much social media changes over the years, fans just want to be heard. They want to know that
Yep.
someone's listening on the other side, and that just means everything. So it's great to hear you.
Well, yeah, and like, and if you think about it, right, like I feel like back in the day, like social, it was just so like, here's what's happening. And now it's like
Yeah,
people don't want that anymore, right? I mean, like, gosh, you could have this like beautifully polished video that you've spent like years working on, and like the concepts are awesome and it performs okay. But then you like have like this like raw video of like someone just like screaming after an amazing goal, and like that outperforms anything you do the entire year. And it's because, right, it feels real. It feels kind of like raw and in the moment, and it allows fans to really connect with it. And like the other stuff, there's still a place for it. It is still impactful. It still matters, but you're starting to see that like a shift in what people care about, and a lot of times it's authenticity.
totally. So I want to kind of you have these big tentpole moments as you're forming the team. You have players getting signed. You have a coach getting named. Oh, the coach came on a little bit earlier. No, you tipped earlier. You have your the team name announcement. Like how much? First off, I'm a big proponent of maximizing tentpole events, and like this was everything for you guys early on. This is everything. How closely can you kind of script like, okay, this is how the naming night is going to go. We're going to do this. We're going to have this. We're going to have this. As opposed to kind of being reactive and knowing that there's going to be a lot of two-way engagement and engaging fan reaction. Like, what does the preparation for these huge moments feel like and look like?
Oh my gosh, brand launch. I will say this. Brand launch was one of the most stressful few weeks of my existence. Like obviously we had been planning stuff for a long time, but there's so many different factors that go into timing of that, right? And so like once we were kind of in a place where like we actually have a legit day, and it's not just like maybe this day,
Yeah.
like, and it was like solid. And we were like, oh snap, like we're doing this right now. Um, I mean, gosh, like I think there was probably 4 or 5 nights where I got maybe 3 hours of sleep because I was just like, I don't know, like your brain's just going, right? They were like thinking like, oh, like what if we did this? Or what if we did this? Or oh, I need to finish up this thing, or I need to work on this thing. And I wish I could show you the docs that I have, because I had a schedule that had posts going out like every 15 minutes for like an entire day. And then like when we actually got there, I think that we did like not even a quarter of them, which is like fine, right? Because like it worked. And like that's part of it, right? Is you do all this prep work, you can gather a ton of stuff, but there's also an element of like you have a good framework in place that allows you to then be flexible and pivot.
Yeah.
And that I think was like one of the, I don't know, things that I think was really cool about what we did. And we were really able to say like, okay, like, does it make sense to do all of this, or should we pivot and let some of these things breathe, let some of them have the space to kind of create that impact. And it was awesome. And it was funny because it was like, because it was in the era of like Zoom, I noticed like, gosh, that like they were doing these like virtual like seminars, right? Like, if you ever go to like the big conferences, they were doing like conferences virtually. And so they had all these like breakout sessions. And we're in like a thing of being like, okay, well, like once we do the name, then what? And I was kind of like, what if we did like virtual breakout sessions? And our marketing team, our comms team took that, ran with it. And
Yeah.
like we had this like really cool thing where we did like, deep dives with like Adidas and the designers. And, we had like our community team like join on. We had hockey join on, like, our GM, like AGM, like it was so cool. Just like all of these things that like went into it that like kind of made it so successful, right? Because not only were we announcing this thing, but then we were offering people this like really intense look into like why we did it, what to expect, and really we showed them why they should care. And I think that was kind of what helped us to like hook everything.
It truly was a brand launch. Like it could have just been like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're gonna see the colors and here's the name. Like, but you guys really, it was beyond that. And to your point, it was like, what do we stand for? Why is our colors this? Why is our logo look like this? Why is our
Mm-hmm.
jersey look like this? Why are we the Kraken? And you guys did a great job of telling all those stories. And it was cool. It's cool to hear about the mini Zoom sessions as well and having people bouncing in and out. And
Yeah, it
you
was
guys
like
had
super
players there
fun.
as well. You guys had, I think, Jaden Schwartz was there, and Some
So
players.
that was different. That was the expansion draft. So that came
Oh,
362 days later. So this is not quite a full year, but almost a year to the day. And yeah, the expansion draft. Oh my gosh, that was insane. My boss is our VP of communications. He and I worked out of like where Hockey Ops is based out of to just like get everything prepped. Like I was there to like help take photos and to like have these kind of like cool behind the scene moments that like I don't know in like 25 years we're gonna want, right? So
yeah.
we worked out of there. God, just the hours were insane. Again, it was one of those things where like I think I got like 2 hours of sleep the night before because you're just like going through everything, scrubbing stuff, making sure we have like all of the graphics are ready and we can start versioning things out. And there's just like all of this prep work that goes into it. And then the next day, like we drive to the airport, we collect the 6 guys who were here, and you're just like, oh my God, we have a team. Like it was so crazy.
Well, speaking of team ops and PR and
Mhm.
communications, did you guys know what the roster was, or were you guys learning in real time or beforehand?
Yeah. So we had a good idea of what it was going to look like. But obviously, there's a level of like secrecy, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
non-disclosure type of stuff. And, so we had a good idea. We knew who the 6 guys that were flying in were. So we were able to kind of like do some prep work for them. Like, they had jerseys created and stuff like that. And yeah, it was just crazy. Like we went through, had to scrub, you do like your standard thing, which I think probably most teams do. Is like anytime you get a new player, you like go through the socials, just give
Yeah.
it a peruse, make sure that it's clean. And it's so funny to like think back on that and kind of be like, oh my God, all of the work that went into getting all of this ready, and then you're still like, you're trying to find like handles and like social profiles, but you can't follow anything, but like, you're pretty sure this is the right one, but then also like not super sure because it hasn't ever been used. And you're just like, but like, we can't ask. Like, it was just such a fun, like funny experience.
And then as you like actually start to think about we have to operate and we have a season coming, we have games, we have to actually
Mm-hmm.
like do the thing that 31 other teams are doing. Like was it pretty much like, hey, this is what your resources look like, this is what your staff's going to look like, maximize what you can out of it? Or are there conversations around like, hey, this is what the org chart looks like for this team, and maybe we should have a person for this, a specialist for this, or a freelancer for this? Like, how do those conversations come together? Of like, this is how our infrastructure is going to look, and I'm sure it's a collaborative process.
It's super collaborative. I think a lot of it, like we were pretty sure that like, we wanted to try and advocate for like a third spot on the social team. But I think like it was funny because like there were so many things that factored into like initially we were going to do a delayed hire and then we're like, oh, like maybe actually we push this back because it's like the first season. And again, like I'm going into my 11th year working in pro hockey.
Wow.
Our inaugural season was the hardest thing that I've ever done. It was so much fun. It was stressful. It was crazy. It was chaotic. There were a lot of challenges, but it was so much fun, right? And you learned so much from it. Um, but I also know just like as busy as we were and just like, I mean, you're we were joking. We always joke around. We say that, like year one, you're trying to tread water, right? You're just trying to keep your head above because everything's a first, right? And you'll be halfway through something and you're like, wait a second, this isn't in place yet. Oh my God, like I have to create this new process in addition to doing this thing that I would like. I'm so used to there being a process in place, and you're just like, oh my gosh, now you're trying to do like 5 things at once instead of one thing. And so just kind of like going through that, like you kind of feel it's like you're treading water. And then year two, so our last season, we kind of thought of as like our first like real expansion season, right? Because you go from just like everything's the first, you have all of these crazy milestones, you have, players coming in for the first time, a brand new fan base, you're also dealing with COVID restrictions still.
Yeah.
To last year was the first year we were really able to get out into the community, right? So, having school visits, having guys go visit hospitals, ball hockey clinics, like all sorts of things that, we weren't able to do that first year, we got to do last year. And so we kind of thought of this like, this is our true expansion year, right? And like this is the year where we're kind of fine tuning things. We're getting stuff into place. We were able to advocate, after our first season and how busy we were like, hey, here's the reason why we need like a new person. Like, here's, kind of some metrics from other clubs. Here's why we think this is a good fit. And we're able to successfully advocate for that. And I think at the end of the day, like, those conversations, I don't know what they look like for most teams, but those start pretty early because it's a long process, right? So
how did these strategies come together around like just the day-to-day stuff? Like how our voice, I mean, your voice is already kind of established at that point, but like how do we live tweet a game? Hey, it's something that we want to touch on as well is like these platforms like TikTok really came about as the Kraken were being formed, and it's a whole new platform where like the way you operate and act on TikTok might be different sometimes. You might try some more absurd stuff, but like, how did you guys go about knowing where to take chances, knowing what to do if the team was winning by a lot, the team was losing by a lot, on just kind of developing that overall framework for how you guys operate from social media perspective?
yeah, so I think our first year, and I'm going to start by saying like we are so lucky that our executive leadership team has bought in. My very first day working for back then it was NHL Seattle. Our CEO Todd Leiweke pulled me into his office, introduced himself. We got to chat, and he goes, "I just want you to know that I don't want you to feel like you have to get every single post approved before you hit send." He was like, "We've hired you for a reason. Run with it and do what you think makes sense." And there's obviously still there's stuff you have to go through the correct approvals, but it's that vote of confidence, right? Like not every team is like that. And I think it was really, really cool to see and to be able to kind of like have that buy-in from the very beginning. And I think just like with my experience working within the league, I was able to earn a lot of that trust with our leadership, with my bosses. And so year one, it was a lot of just like, we're going to test things out. We're going to have some fun with this. We're going to see how it goes. Yeah. We know what our general voice and tone is, but we also don't know what this team's going to look like, right? Like we were hoping we were good. We weren't sure. These guys had never played together before, right? In a city most of them probably haven't really ever been to. New coaching staff. There's so many factors that go into that. And so, we kind of preface it by saying, we do know that we don't want to do play-by-play. We're going to focus on highlights because when you're scrolling through, typically that's what people want is highlights and score updates. So kind of follow that route. And then again, it was just kind of playing around with it, right? Saying like, okay, like, if we have a high scoring game, we find that maybe people actually will engage more if we do a like carousel of goals rather than like an individual post for every single goal, right? And so just kind of like playing that by ear and being able to take chances and to take risks. I think we leaned a lot into to humor, right? And keeping it real. I mean, as lame as that sounds, our team, unfortunately, like we didn't, get too high in the standings that first season. So we leaned into humor, right? It's like, let's find a way to laugh at this. It sucks. Like we're also fans of our team. We want us to do well, but we're not going to try and sugarcoat it, right? Like I've challenged myself and the Zachs, both my teammates, both the kids on my team, their name are Zach. So both of them, Sam and Zachs, I've told them, I was like, let's never just say final, right? Like, let's find a way to do something else, right? Like if we have a bad game, is there something that we can do to still build up a player who performed well? Is there something to do to poke fun at ourselves or to acknowledge that it sucks, right? Like losing sucks. No one likes it. And the team shouldn't pretend like it's okay. And so that's something that we've challenged ourselves to do. But going into year two, right, we were kind of like, I don't know if that's going to fly for 2 years in a row. Right? I have to think about fan response because now fans are starting to get it. We made some moves in the off season. We had Matty Beniers coming in for his first season. Like the pressure was a little higher. The stakes were a little higher. And so, we still wanted to incorporate the tone and the lightness, but we wanted to also like have fans recognize that like, we do have high expectations for ourselves too. We're not okay with being at the bottom of the standings. And I think we did a really good balance of that, right? Of like, there were a couple times where we still integrated like the funny, like, final score graphic and like a joke. There were times where we were just like, yeah, this really sucks. And there was other times where we're just like, you know what? We didn't win this one, but like, look at how good, Gruby did, right? He had some sort of crazy save percentage and like just absolutely crushed it. And it was a goaltender battle. And, like you find different things to relate to your fans.
Yeah, and there's something special too to have the fans riding that roller coaster with you, and like your guys are doing it together. Because then in year two, when you guys do make do well and start to win and make a playoff run this past year, like that, it's that much more fun. It's that much more meaningful because you haven't been just like ignoring like the bad stuff throughout as well, and it pretending like it doesn't exist. So when you guys do start to win, make that playoff run, like is there a moment where you kind of just look at each other and be like, hey, like, you guys, you may not want to make plans in the late spring, like, and then is there that increased pressure to be like, hey, we're getting dealt our winning hand now, we're getting dealt pocket aces or pocket kings, like we got to make sure we maximize what we can, and is there more pressure to monetize then, especially as that's become a bigger mandate throughout pre-pandemic and now especially. So like, what was that process like of really riding that wave throughout last year?
Yeah, I mean, our biggest thing like last year, and again, we talk about this a lot, but our focus whenever it comes to like our team doing well, right? Like I think you're kind of starting to see like, the memes are becoming like more a little bit more spicy these days, right? And teams aren't afraid to kind of like rag on each other, and there's a time and a place for that for sure. But I think our big thing was like, we would rather build ourselves up and instead of tear others down, right? And so it's like, again, like there are certain teams, where maybe we have good relationships with the admins, so we can plan some fun back and forth. There's some fun banter, but at the same time, like we want to focus on building our team up. And, it's again, there's always a place for the spicy comment here and there, but it's not like I think the focal point of our strategy. And so like when we're kind of talking through this, we're planning all this stuff, that was one of the big things that was kind of at the forefront, right? Like, let's find a way to keep building this up because this team is special, and we've got it now. We don't know if we're going to get it again. You're never guaranteed anything in this league. You have to work for it every single game, every single shift. As cliche as it sounds, it's so true. A lot of people didn't peg us to make the playoffs last year, let alone beat freaking Colorado. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what? And so, it was a lot of it was just, let's focus on building it up now, building these, relationships now, building the goodwill now, so that, we have that kind of there. We can start forming those connections with our fans and really, continue to grow them in an environment that is really positive.
Hell yeah, and you're speaking my language. You and I are definitely copacetic here. I love it being more about let's celebrate our team as opposed to just like focusing on stomping on the team we beat. There's fun to have on both sides, but you'd rather have them being like, hell yeah, the Kraken won, rather than hey, the other guys lost, and we're not even going to think about the Kraken. So
yeah, and it's like it's funny, right? Because it's like we won our first game against the Canucks in team history this past year. And we had a bunch of stuff. They were like, oh, it'd be fun because it's like that's an easy rivalry, right? Like that's an easy one to kind of like poke fun at. But at the same time, like they had just gone through a coaching change, like the team wasn't doing well, and like, we were just like, you know what, like why make them feel worse about this? Like when the team's already in a tough situation, like it doesn't make sense. And so we really ended up kind of just being like, you know what, we're gonna scrap most of this. Let's just run with like we can build ourselves up. We can focus into the positives that came from us rather than just being like, you have this team, like they're in a bad spot. It's like, well, no, like, cause that could be us. And like, I've been there, I've been in a team, like, with teams that have been in bad spots before, and it sucks. Like, you don't want to make people feel bad.
So tell me a little about how monetizing social works for the Kraken, with sponsored content, running marketing campaigns, the collaboration with partnerships. How has that come about, and has it evolved at all in your time there? Especially when you guys are trying to maybe even do stuff before the team existed. Like, was that even a thing, or was it like, hey, let's establish our social presence first, and then we'll monetize?
Oh no, we started recruiting all that stuff way back in the day. Nice. I work really, really closely with our partnerships team. We've got a really great crew here. Again, like one of the things that I stressed really early on was, we're not an ad, right? Like we're not somewhere where people just be like, post this graphic and tell people to come to our website and buy things. It's like, no, like let's integrate, right? Like let's incorporate into things that we're already doing. Let's make this feel organic. Like, the one project I feel like that I'm so proud of is we have this series called Uncharted with Filson, and this project has been my baby for like since 2020 when I first thought about it, and it's taken so many different iterations and life forms and has turned into so many, there's been so many variables with it, but we were able to really like, we took two of our guys hiking. We have another episode coming out in a couple of weeks, so shout out that. We took Jared McCann fishing and, immersed them into the Pacific Northwest, right? And it was a cool content series that felt very Seattle, but it integrated a partner and also integrated like what matters to the partner, right? Which is getting people outside and, integrating them into the wilderness and like kind of telling some of that story there. So it's something that, like, I think we're really proud of when it comes to sponsored content, right? And then again, integrating people into the things that we're already doing. So if we have right? Like a game preview. How do we integrate partners into that, right? So, we have a couple things that we're working on right now too with, different kind of game day elements, and how do these look and how can these evolve and be better? And, even if it feels maybe sometimes like it's a logo slap, like usually there's a deeper reason into doing it, right? It's saying, okay, like we know that I'm just going to pull something. This is not real, but like, it's like, say we have a partner who really focuses on data and analytics. And, we have a graphic that we do for a game day that kind of shows the different stats of the game. Like it might feel like a logo slap, but if that's something that's important to them, but it's something that's important to us, like why not integrate those two things together because they match and they feel holistic, right? Rather than just being like, we're going to put a random plumbing company logo on this graphic because we just need to put something there, So we try to be a little bit more thoughtful with our approach.
No, I totally. I was even imagining like AWS, like advanced stats on a graphic, like those kind of perfect elements there.
Yeah.
A couple more minutes left here with Savannah Hollis. I could seriously talk to you all day. Savannah Hollis, senior social media manager for the Seattle Kraken. Just want to ask a little about new platforms, what your guys' framework is for making decisions. When we have threads coming about, depending on when you're listening to this in the past couple of weeks here, when you have, TikTok, we talked a little about earlier about how it goes about deciding to focus on that. Like, how do you guys decide, hey, let's get on here. This is going to be our point of view on here. This is why it's worth doing. Or are you intentionally early movers? Or are you intentionally wait and seers? Or does it kind of vary?
Yeah, no, great question. And I realize you also kind of asked this previously with TikTok and I didn't answer, so I apologize. I will tell everyone I am a talker. I love to chat, but sometimes I get sidetracked. So I will try and answer both of those succinctly in this one. A lot of it is trial fire, right? It's being willing to put yourself out there and try new things. I think with both TikTok and with, we're seeing it now with threads too. We've kind of prefaced to everybody ahead of time. We're saying, hey, we're going to take, a couple months. We're going to see how this platform develops. We're going to test some things out. Once we get to a point where we feel like we have a real strategy that is impactful, like then we can start doing broader activations on it, right? Yeah. I think TikTok was a really good example of that, where, like, I'll be honest, I love TikTok, but oh my gosh, it's so stressful. Like it moves so fast. And so, I didn't have a ton of time to dedicate to it, right? Which is one of the reasons we ended up hiring Zach Zeman on my team to come in and kind of help to like manage that voice and that platform, because that is something that requires time and dedication and consistency. And, and so we've really kind of done a lot of trial by fire. It's let's try something. Let's see, does this trend actually resonate with our audience or with, people who are seeing our videos, or do we care more about this? One of the weirdest things we have found, in addition to Book Talk, which I'm sure if anyone's listening, they've probably seen the Kraken and Book Talk. But the thing that we've seen a lot is people are fascinated by the equipment staff. Like we could post stuff about our equipment staff, I don't know, changing skate blades with their bare hands like every day and probably get hundreds of thousands of views on every video. It's unbelievable. Obviously, we tapped into Book Talk a little bit there, which is cool. It's a really interesting community. And, I think I think it's been interesting to see like how the rest of the league, like once they kind of realized what we were doing, is now kind of bought into it, which I'm like always low-key so proud of my team for kind of diving in there. And just like engaging with the community, right? That most sports leagues kind of ignored for the most part, right? Yeah. So it's been, I think on that front, it's been cool. And it's again, goes back to that, our executives have trusted us. And luckily, right, we haven't done anything to break that trust yet, or hopefully ever. And yeah, I mean, with threads, right, like I think we're all pretty smart and know that it's not going to be the same platform in about 6 months. And so for us, it's just like, okay, like, let's see what works. If you look through our threads profile, it's a lot of, there's kind of like random, I don't know, seemingly random posts, or it's like, oh yeah, like, I snapped a photo of Mount Rainier this last week. And I was like, oh, popped up from the depths to take a look at Mount Rainier because like the mountain's out. It's a very Seattle thing. It's kind of random, but like still gets a couple hundred likes, which for threads, I feel like is pretty good. We'll announce like breaking, news on there with our player signings, coach extension, things like that. So again, it's a lot of trial by fire, a lot of just kind of like seeing how other brands are using the platform, how creators are using the platform, how general users are using it, and integrating it and trying new things and seeing what works.
Oh, no, I love the thoughtful response. And Savannah, I think I have like 8,000 more tangents I want to go off on with you, but I'm gonna stop myself because we'll be here all day and all night. But we're gonna have some more fun with you coming up in our one-timer segment, so that's coming up right now. So much good stuff with Savannah Hollis, Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Just covered a ton of topics with her. Could learn from her so much. Can talk to her for hours. We're going to have some more fun with her coming up in our one-timer segment. First, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from a pretty in-depth study by YouGov all about sports fans, specifically talking to sports fans that engage with sports. Not just like regular U.S. consumers, but actual fans that identify as sports fans that engage regularly with their sport. And the stat I'm going to share with you today, there's a bunch of good stats in it, but the stat I'm going to share with you is 48%. And that is that 48% of hockey fans say they will regularly watch games in their entirety, and that is the highest among all the other among all sports. So, compared to soccer, golf, basketball, baseball, and American football. Pretty interesting. And by proxy, hockey also indexes the lowest for those who regularly watch highlights, as opposed to primarily the game in its entirety. So you can see a preference for watching the entire game as opposed to just catching up on highlights. It's not to say there's still not a lot of fans that are watching highlights, of course, and especially if you are watching the game live, you may still watch replays. Stuff happens so quickly in hockey. A lot of goals scored off like pinball-style goals. If you want to talk about which ones index the highest for highlights, you would look at football and basketball. It's also the sports that where fans are most likely to do something. There are other sports where like there's an index for doing neither, meaning that you follow and engage with the sport, but you may not watch highlights regularly or watch games in their entirety regularly. You may only look at social media, or only read, or only listen to podcasts primarily. And the lowest for highlights is golf. Maybe. Probably a little bit surprising there, but I guess people tend to watch for lengths of time, or may not need to watch highlights so frequently. But a pretty interesting one there that stood out to me. So lots of good stats in this report. Definitely something to think about of how do your most engaged fans typically consume your sport, typically engage with your sport. Are there fans that you will only see on social media? Are there fans that are watching the game in its entirety? How much should the second screen matter during sports, or how much is social media being the primary screen for many of your fans? Something to really sit back and think about what your goals are with each of those fan cohorts. If someone's only encountering you on social media, what does the next level of avidity look like for them? What are the goals of those fans? Vice versa for fans that may not watch highlights quite as much, or may not go on social media quite as much, but are engaging a lot with the live games. As the report will show as well, live games tend to be more on the 35-plus side, especially on the 55-plus side. Perhaps not surprising there. But so much interesting stuff happening across generations when it comes to how fans consume their favorite sports, consume sports in general that they will identify as one of the sports they're a fan of. So really interesting stuff. Again, that shareable stat, but there's many stats to talk about. The shareable stat is 48% of hockey fans who consume hockey regularly say they kind of watch live games in their entirety more than other sports in the study. So, interesting stuff. Again, that's a shareable stat. Think about it, talk about it, ponder it. But more importantly, stick around because we're going to have some more fun and learn more from Savannah Hollis of the Seattle Kraken. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Savannah Hollis. She is Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Savannah, you kicked ass in your interview. Are you now ready to take some one-timers?
I'm in. Let's go.
All right, I'll feed them. You'll shoot them. Number one, tell me throughout your three NHL stops so far, between the Preds, the Panthers, and now the Kraken, your favorite or most memorable player or players to work with if you can't choose one.
Okay, most memorable player. I mean, I feel like it has to be Luongo, right? Like I worked with him his last NHL season. Like that dude's a legend. So I feel like it has to be him.
Seriously, and also just a tremendous Twitter follow, and continues to be a tremendous Twitter follow as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, his stuff during the playoffs, I was dying. It was amazing.
All-timer. Number two. This is an interesting one here. Tell me, your number one like kind of guiding principle or mantra when it comes to sports social media. What's that like thing you keep in your head to remember?
Keep an open mind.
Yeah. And how is it coming to play? Like whether it's just like new ideas or things that like you have your mind changed about, like, hey, I thought this, but now I think this because I've learned something else. Like, how's it helped you?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's helpful in a lot of senses. Like, when it comes to new content, new ideas, letting other people have voices in the social world, right? Even if they're not the main social people. Training new team members, right? Like social can be a hard one to kind of get out of that day to day and to let some of the reins go. And you have to have an open mind, right? Because if you don't trust the people that you work with, if you don't listen to new ideas, if you don't try and constantly get better and keep that open mind on ways to do it, you're going to get stagnant and eventually fall behind.
Love that. Yeah, one of my favorite like retrospective questions to ask is like, what have I had my mind changed about recently? Like, if you haven't had your mind changed recently, then you're not challenging your ideas enough. And sort of speaking of that, it's a perfect segue into our next question of kind of making that shift from being that one person show you talked about early on in your days, especially with Texas, of then having to trust others to give up that being that person that pushes send on everything and writes the exact copy. Like, how did you find the transition going from day-to-day person and doing everything to becoming a manager of people?
It is a hard transition. I think if you ask Zach Peggins, one of my direct reports, he would probably say it was a little intimidating, because I think I've definitely learned to be not have tried to learn to not micromanage. I think it's a really easy trap to fall into, because you're so used to like, okay, I know the tone, I know the voice, but, there's also a level of like, it is okay if things aren't always 100% the way that I would do them, because like, here's maybe a bit of a better metaphor is, if you have one singular goal and three people trying to achieve that goal, you're probably going to have three paths to get to that goal.
Yeah.
And there's no one to say which path is necessarily the right one. There's a path you would take, but the path someone else take could still be just as successful. And so it's trying to remember that I think has really helped me the most, because it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's, I think with social, because there's such a like, I can see my work, I can see what I'm doing. So when you start to come out of the day to day and look more at strategy, look at more people management, look at more, like concepting or sitting in meetings, it's harder to see the amount of work that you're doing. And so you're like, am I still like doing something here? You know what I mean? Because you're so used to being like, well, no, this is everything that I've done. Look, I'm working hard. Like, here's the metrics to back it up. And, so it's just like, as you become a little bit more higher level, it's definitely an interesting process and a bit of an adjustment, but keeping an open mind and, being willing to like listen to your team too. It's huge.
I love that perspective and how you kind of framed it as well. And that's why it speaks to why you need those frameworks. You need that why. So that if we all know why, what we're doing and what we're trying to do, then again, like to your point, you may take different pathways. If we want to be known as whatever a team account that's very representative of Seattle culture, this is what Seattle culture is about. This is the attitude we want to have, and then that everyone is kind of going in that same North Star direction, and the different pathways to get there, but they're ultimately all striving for the same ultimate outcome. So I like that.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Number 4 for you here. Speaking of keeping an open mind, we've all seen the rapid takeoff of generative AI in the past with ChatGPT, with Midjourney, with everything under the sun. Have you even wrapped your head around that stuff yet? Have you guys thought about how you want to incorporate it, if at all, or is it's just kind of premature right now, and you don't need it to invade your processes yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're still kind of operating under the like, let's kind of keep loose tabs on it. Like, we have some fun posts planned. I think it might be today. The team's working on to kind of come up with some like funny, like more just like tongue-in-cheek content, like meme type stuff, rather than like super serious, like reasons to help write copy and stuff like that. Cause I don't know, like this is gonna sound stupid, but it does feel like cheating a little bit to me. So I don't know. I still haven't fully made up my mind on it yet, but I think that there's definitely a time and a place for it. I think you can have fun with it, but I think I don't know. I don't want us to take shortcuts and rely too much on it and start to, I don't know, like take away from our own creativity because we're relying on someone else to do it for us.
I like that mindset, and it can be a co-pilot. It can be something to help you get started, but it can also like kind of be a way to test how good am I at articulating thoughts, articulating ideas. Like, yes. Hey, if this is what I want the copy to sound like, how do I describe what this copy is supposed to sound like or what this image is supposed to look like? And the better you get,
Yep.
and ChatGPT and Midjourney can kind of keep you on your toes there. But it's like, hey, I think this is representing this kind of brand, this kind of attitude, but is it? And it just
Yep.
lots of fun ways to kind of play with it. But to your point, it's pretty early on now, and there's something to that human element as well that you always want to have part of it.
Yeah, I think this is like it's funny because it's like one of those few things where I like this is one of the few things I get like maybe a little school on where I'm like I don't know, I'm like kind of skeptical of this because like you never I don't know, it's like there's always that fear of like can a machine replace us? Like you know what I mean? So there's that like I want to be careful and make sure that this doesn't take our job at some point, which is probably a little crazy, but you know, you never it's always in the back of the mind. It's like a oh my gosh, if you've ever seen the movie, gosh, what was it? It was with Joaquin Phoenix where he was like dating. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, honestly, I think that that's part of the reason why maybe I'm so skeptical. That movie scarred me. It was terrifying.
Maybe you can use it for Bowie's accounts for the mascot account.
Yeah, exactly.
Number five, this is gonna be an interesting one, because you have probably just seen this happen as the team has become a team. Who? So two-part question. First, who is the most famous, objectively famous, I guess, Kraken fan, and then who is the most intense Kraken super fan?
Oh, okay. I would say most famous Kraken fan. This is I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Lana Condor. She's
Wow.
yeah, so she follows us. We actually like worked with her for our brand launch. Like she did like some like little spots for us. Follows us. Like she's been out to some games, like super, super cool. Which
That's
it's
all.
like funny because like I don't know, like you were just like, oh wait, yeah, like you're a normal person too. Like so that's it's been really cool to kind of like see her and like what it's funny, like whenever she posts about us, like I've definitely noticed we'll get at least like a couple hundred followers from it. And I'm like, this is so cool. Yeah. And then I would say like most intense. Ooh, we have a lot of really intense fans. But I would say like in terms of like most intense, like famous fan, probably DJ Dallas from the Seahawks.
Yeah.
He loves the Kraken and we love him. Like he's so great. And it's been like cool. Like he actually like for his headshot, he did the Tannen headshot with like the big ghost eyes and like brought that to the NFL. And I was like, this is sick. Like it's so cool.
Such great synergy there. I love that. And I'm sure have you got like, are there that group of like half dozen fans that they are gonna reply to every tweet or comment on every
Yes.
Instagram post? And those, I mean, those super fans, you love them, and hopefully, I'm sure the Kraken have their share there.
Oh yeah, no, we've got a really good group of like kind of core fans that we've started to recognize online and just like I think one of the coolest things though is like we have such a positive fan base. You know, and like everyone's really supportive. And I think that's like one of my favorite things about like our online crew is like, you know, we've built a place that is pretty open and pretty yeah, pretty good.
Love hearing that. Next up for you, a few minutes left here with Savannah Hollis of the Seattle Kraken. We got a few questions left in our one-timers. We talked about this a little bit earlier as you were, thinking about the early content strategy and, leaning in a little bit to the hockey stuff and helping to educate. And what's cool, I think, is you guys have started from scratch. So there is no like, this is the way we've always done things. We've always done this kind of game recap. We've always done this kind of game preview. We've always done the starting line rushes or whatever it might be. So how have you guys kind of balanced that? Hey, we're trying to develop hockey fans. We're trying to educate you about the sport, alongside, hey, we don't care if you necessarily like are a hockey diehard and care about where a power play looks like or a PK looks like, but you're a Seattle fan and you're a fan of the brand of the Kraken team, and we could be playing any sport and you still love us. Like, how do you balance that hockey versus brand?
Yeah, I mean it's got to be a healthy mix, right? You know, I think one of the really cool things is so again, I've been a hockey fan since I was a kid, right? So I maybe bring more of the like well, this is like how we can reach like the avid fans. Zach, employee number two, Mr. Zach Peggins on my team, didn't grow up a hockey fan, right? And so I think we've had a really good synergy in terms of being able to kind of say like from a diehard versus a newcomer, right? Like how do we tell the story and find that balance? And there have been times where he's like, look, like I'm gonna be honest, like putting my like fan hat on, he's like, if I'm scrolling through and I see that, I don't care. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, but why? And like, we'll kind of like talk it out. And it's really cool. And I think like, the other part of it, right, is remembering that this is a no judgment zone. Like we are new. And if you want to be a fan of us, that's freaking awesome. And we welcome that. Like we want to build this organization. We want to build this team. We want to build this sport. And it doesn't matter if you're new, if you're if you've been watching hockey for decades and you've just started to adopt us, if you've never seen it before and you found us from Book Talk, great. Like, there's no judgment here. Ask the questions you want. Like, we had our first season. We went to overtime for the first time in Columbus. We lost, but we still got a point. Our fans had no idea that you could still get points when you lose. And so I was like, wait a second, we should do a story on this. And so we did a story on it, and it was like, it performed pretty well. Right. And so it's like, there's no judgment. If enough people ask something, sure, like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out and let's educate people. Because again, we're new too. Like, there's zero judgment here, and there should never be judgment for people trying to learn something.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can remember early on, my mom came to, when I was working in hockey, came to all the games, and she didn't know what the heck was going on besides goals were scored or good when our team scored. And now, like, then she learned like what offsides and icing is.
Yep.
And she learned about a power play and a double minor versus a minor, and it's cool to see like that formation of hockey fans and how it can start from a relatively shallow, for lack of a better term, thing, and then it becomes like interested in the sport because they want to be able to cheer at the right times and know what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, hey, it's like me trying to follow along with soccer right now, right? I'm like, wait, these chants are really cool. I want to learn how to do this,
Number 7 for you, Savannah. This is an interesting one here. Tell me the social media platform or digital channel where the Kraken drive the most revenue, if that's even kind of applicable, if you guys are just everything is all social. And alongside that, the one where you kind of have your eye on is, hey, this is a great growth area for us, a platform or channel that we can really drive more value from.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the standard answer, but I think like for the last few years, you've probably seen the most kind of like revenue through our like meta ads. So Facebook, Instagram, you typically tend to kind of see like the most click-throughs. I would say
that where sponsor content performs the best as well, is where you guys get the most sponsor revenue, is from Instagram also?
That's actually a really good question. So for most of us, so we actually like through the way that kind of like our sponsored content set up is we kind of attach it to series. So, we kind of look at the performances as a whole. We do evaluate based on platform as well, but really kind of we focus on like that bigger picture of like, is this engaging? Like, is there like what's the engagement rate? How many people are clicking through? And we kind of look at it holistically to kind of see like, okay, great. We've noticed maybe, there's like one platform where it just really isn't hitting, and then we'll evaluate that. But we do kind of think about it a little bit more big picture than kind of individual platform.
And that makes sense. It's like a franchise that just is packaged properly for each platform for the audience.
Exactly. And then for growth opportunity, I mean, I feel like the easy one to say is Threads, right? Because it is honestly, I think it's kind of the first real competitor to Twitter right now, and it is going to change so much. But I mean, they have access to so many more people than Twitter does that I'm kind of interested to see how this goes the next couple months, to see if they can actually kind of get that like meaningful engagement on there, versus Twitter, or I guess now it's called X. Conversation for another day. But I think TikTok is still really kind of that big one right now. One that's maybe a little underutilized, I think probably within the sports advertising world, is probably Snapchat. Yeah. You look at the numbers on there of like kids kind of like under 18, and it is unbelievable. And, it's one where I wish I had more bandwidth to like kind of really dive into that and kind of figure out how we could have more of a presence there. But it's definitely one that I think is undervalued probably across most orgs.
Totally. That's one that I always keep an eye on Snapchat to see who's spending time on there and what they can get out of it. To your point, that they have 300 plus million monthly active users, many of them in that coveted age demographic. So it's there.
Yep.
All right, it's time for food question. Savannah, always gonna ask a food question, and you've lived in some great food cities. So this is gonna be a two-parter because I have to ask the Nashville one as well. So tell me the best meal to get in Seattle if I come visit you there. Where do we get it? And then the same question for Nashville if you and I go visit Nashville.
I mean, you got to go fresh seafood if you're coming here, right? Like, you can get a good steak anywhere. You can get chicken wings anywhere, like pizza anywhere. Got to go seafood. I'm a big sushi fan. There's a place called Moshi Moshi over in Ballard that has some of my favorite cuts of fish. And so I would absolutely take anyone there. It is my favorite. I take my family there. It's so good. And then I'd say, for Nashville, oh my gosh. Okay. There's so many places, but one of the go-tos that I always try to get when I'm there is hot chicken. I will say, I think Hattie B's is highly overrated. Prince's is one of my top, but I also really love, there's this place called Pepper Fire. Pepper Fire used to be like really close to where I used to live in East Nashville, but they like moved to West End. But those two, so Princess or Pepper Fire would be my go-to for hot chicken there.
There we go. All right. Good sushi, good hot chicken. You know how to do it right in each city. That's perfect. Number 9, your favorite piece of content or post. It doesn't have to be the most successful from a metrics perspective. Your favorite piece of content or post that you guys have produced with your time in the Kraken so far.
This is kind of an embarrassing one, but we still laugh about it to this day. So on brand launch, Zach Peggins, who ended up actually coming onto my team a couple months later, Chase Johnson from our brand team, and then a guy named Paul, who was with one of our agencies, actually like helped me with all the social that day. So I like assigned everyone a platform. Like that was kind of what we manned, really focus on fan engagement. At the end of the day, I was going through all of our content, and all of a sudden I saw this like random post that was just like all caps said, we can't wait, or something like that. It had like a million exclamation points, and I was just like, I didn't send this. I was like, who sent this? And so I'm like looking, and I'm like, I asked the guy who was like overseeing Twitter with me, I'm like, you know where this came from? And he was like, no. And I think what happened is, this is like back on the old tweet deck where it's like, if you accidentally hit like a shorthand key, it would change it from a DM to a tweet. And I think that's what happened. Yeah. Is we just had this random tweet that was like, we're so excited, or we can't wait, or whatever it was. And it had like over like 2 million impressions, like crazy numbers. And so like every now and then, like we'll resurface it. It's just so funny to me still. So I think it's one of those, it's like a little embarrassing, but just like, because we don't know quite how it got there or why it performed so well. It's funny. It's not quite the same, but it's kind of like the Kraken's PF Chang's tweet. It's just like, yeah, somehow got out there, not accidentally, but now it's iconic. Exactly.
All right, last one for you, Savannah. Tell me, heading into this coming season, whose stock should we buy? Who's going to increase their game the most? So if it's Matty Beniers, he better be a Hart finalist. But tell me, like, whose stock that we should be buying now, because it's going to increase a crap load during this next season.
I mean, look, Maddie's the obvious choice. I'm still mad that he got snubbed for Lady Bang this year, but it is what it is. I think he's the easy choice. I also think, I mean, Vince Dunn had a record year last year. We just signed him to a big deal, so would love to see him continue to just like absolutely crush it out there. And then obviously Philip Grubauer really came into his own last year, and you saw it back in the playoffs, just absolutely dialed. And so again, those are 3 guys that I would just love to see just dominate this year. And who knows, I'm still holding out that one day we're gonna get just like Yanni Gory just going nuts, and like he'll end up being like our all-star or something. It'd be so cool.
There we go. There might be one whose stock is not as high as it could be now that could shoot up over the next year. So we got some choices there for sure, though, to put our bets on.
Yeah.
All right, Savannah, you kicked ass in your one-timer segment. You tickled the twine quite a bit, lit the lamp, whatever words you want to use. Now it's your chance to take over for me and tell us your social media all-star follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Yes. Okay. This is definitely like more of a focus on sports social, but I love Jess Smith on Twitter, and she's got a blog, Warrior Jess Eagle. She's great. I think just has such good insights, and she follows so many different brands and like finds these just like really incredible pieces of content that like she's honestly like, if you're getting into the social space, you're curious about sports social or just social in general, like she's someone I would absolutely recommend to follow. I'm gonna also shout out Zach Peggins. So he's freaking hilarious. Like I just think he's so great. I love following his Twitter. Like if I was a Kraken fan, like he would be one of my top follows of like a Kraken employee who's just a great follow. Like he's funny. You see some of the memes that don't always quite make it out to Maine, like just a classy dude, just hilarious. So he's great. And then also, I mean, if we're just talking like athletes or like people that I enjoy following, Jack Grealish, Man City, like this guy's a gem. Like I'm a newly intro, like very, very new in my like soccer fandom, but like Jack Grealish has made me want to follow the Premier League. Like it's unbelievable the reach and like the personality and just like the fun that he has. So those are my folks.
Hey, just diverse, fantastic shouts there. Gonna follow all of them for sure, and already do, frankly. So that's awesome. And how about you, Savannah? Where can we find you, as well as all things Kraken across digital social?
Yeah, so I would say probably most active on the Instagram as of right now. Little pay a little less attention to my personal social channels these days, but try to have some fun with it. Got a couple of Instagrams, one for my personal and one for all the hockey photos that don't quite make it out to Maine. So try to just like have some fun, experiment with some new like editing stuff with reels there from time to time. So yeah, those places. And then Twitter, if you have, I don't know, any desire to listen to my weird thoughts that sometimes come out.
And then, of course, follow the Kraken everywhere that you can find them. They are a fantastic follow, have some great creative, great content. And you guys learned today where a lot of that strategy comes from with Savannah Hollis. Thank you for coming on today, letting us pick your brain, learn from you, get inspired by you, get energized by you. You've just been fantastic to talk to.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was so fun, and I appreciate the time.
Such good stuff with Savannah Hollis, Senior Manager of Social Media for the Seattle Kraken. Seriously, just an incredible conversation. Lots of good insights, lots of good information, lots of good inspiration, lots of laughs, lots of just lessons to take away from it. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, because Savannah was just tremendous. And keep an eye on the Kraken as the hockey season is about to start off in a couple months here as of this recording. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. We got some special stuff coming up to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of this podcast. Cannot believe it. In the meantime, follow me on Twitter, NJH287. Also, hit me up on LinkedIn, where you can see more content, write-ups based on the insights in these shows. And, of course, check out the podcast at dsmsports.net. And follow along, subscribe on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.